In just over 1 hour, the Big Ten Championship kicks off in Indianapolis, Indiana. Number 13, Iowa takes on number 2, Michigan. The Hawks are in the Big Ten title game for the first time since 2015. Michigan, despite being one of the most storied programs of all time, is playing in its first Big Ten title game. The stakes, if Iowa wins, the Hawkeyes will go on to play in the Rose Bowl and the first outright conference championship for Coach Kirk Ferentz. The Hawks tied for the title back in 2002 and 2004. If Michigan wins, the Wolverines will capture their first conference title since 2004 when they tied with Iowa and will most likely qualify for the college football playoff. Good evening, everybody. My name is Travis Justice, and over the next hour, we are going to dive in deep to the Big Ten Championship game. And speaking of the Big Ten Championship game, make sure to listen to this game on the radio. That's right. It's on News Radio 1040 WHO with Gary Dolphin and Ed Podolak. After the game, it's WHO After Dark. That's right. After Dark, join me, Ross Peterson, and Sean Roberts for the Jethro's Barbecue Sound Off. Are you ready for this? We're actually scheduled to go on at midnight. That's right, midnight tonight, as it's going to be WHO After Dark. We're scheduled to stay on until 2 o'clock in the morning. If you want to interact with us during the next hour, it's very simple because we're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn. We're all over the place tonight. Just use the comment section. So you can use the comment section. Just write your question, write us a comment, and have a little bit of fun with us because it's going to be a fun and entertaining hour. So joining me for the next hour is the host of the Saturday morning pregame show, also the producer of the KXNO Morning Rush, and he's wearing his Jethro's barbecue hat, Mr. Sean Roberts. What's going on, buddy?
What's happening, man?
You know, it's been a crazy day in college football, absolutely. I mean, we started with that Big 12 title game, which really was decided by inches. This Alabama-Georgia game is crazy. The AAC title game was entertaining for a little bit, but Cincinnati starting to pull away. If today's been any indication, I would like to believe that the Big Ten title game between Iowa and Michigan could be just as entertaining.
Yeah, the Big 12 championship game coming down to the last play pretty much of the game in a matter of inches. Of Oklahoma State sliding possibly their way in. But as we sit right now, no one's getting in.
You're so
outside of your top four, the only way that happens is if we get a big win tonight from the Iowa Hawkeyes.
And that would be not out of the realm of possibility. People are probably thinking, what are you talking about, Travis? What do you mean not out of the realm of possibility? Let's look at this all-time series between Michigan and Iowa. Now, Michigan leads, has a commanding lead, 42 wins, 15 losses, and 4 ties. But Iowa, Sean, has won. Are you ready for that? Won 5 of the last 7 games. That's impressive. The last time they played was back in 2019. Michigan won a close one. But how about this? Michigan ranked number 2. Iowa ranked number 13. Michigan is 6-5-1 when both teams are ranked. And what that tells me is this. These two teams right now are going to give us, I think, one hell of a football game tonight.
I like the record there. There's some hope because the point spread doesn't give much hope. So as Iowa fans or Iowa supporters, we're looking for any sort of glimmer of hope. I like the 6-5-1. I like that.
You know, Kirk Ferentz, last Friday didn't even know if he was going to be in the Big Ten title game. Took some help from Minnesota to beat Wisconsin. And then they had to prepare late. But he reflects on the games with Michigan that he's had, that most recent history, and of course getting ready for tonight's game as well.
Yeah, it's I'm still trying to get my head around that a little bit. We've played some games. I'm thinking just off the top of my head 2 times ago when we played these guys in 16. I think we were 30-point underdogs, 26, something like that. I think back to the Penn State 08 game where they were second or third in the country, whatever they might have been. Think about LSU, which, I know it was a miracle play at the end. The miracle really was that after 59 minutes that we were even in the ball game. If you really looked at their personnel, you go back and look at who's on that roster. So I look at the thing of those 3 games and just like, and I told the team, the fun part about these games is you really have to be at your best each and every play. And those old axioms or cliches about, you never know what 6 plays or 8 plays are going to define a game. they are true. And in games like this, they're certainly true. But these guys are just so good in every position. They just put a lot of pressure on you. And I don't mean like, blitzing pressure, but it's just, or tempo pressure, but it's just, you know what they're capable of. So you really have to just try to make them earn everything. And that's going to, it's easier said than done. And then we're going to have to come up with something, somewhere along the way, create a break or whatever. And, somehow, some way, find a way to get it done.
That is easier said than done, but let's use Penn State as an example earlier in this season. I was going to play a chess match, right? They're not going to try to score a ton of points because I don't think they can score a ton of points against Michigan. But this is going to come down to who can make the fewest amount of mistakes and who can capitalize on somebody else's mistake, much like Iowa did with that touchdown pass against Penn State. So this has an interesting scenario with it tonight for sure.
Yeah, we talked about this on the Saturday morning pregame today. Ross Peterson was on. We had Andrew Downs on as well, and both of them had the same answer. If we're relying on Iowa's offense to win this game, it's not good. It's not good.
No, not at all.
Iowa's gonna need turnovers. Special teams is gonna be huge. Flipping the field position, and if Iowa keeps it close or has a lead going into halftime, we know what that second half is going to be. Ross Peterson always talks about it here in studio. Take the air out of the ball, and you kind of just suffocate the rest of the game. And I wouldn't see it being any different here at the Big Ten championship game.
One of the big things that has been focused on, especially with Michigan, is that huge win over Ohio State, right? That was talking about an emotional rush. That was Jim Harbaugh's first win against Ohio State. You had what seemed like the entire attendance at the Big House get on that field. We had like 100,000 people on that field, and they've been talking about a letdown for Michigan. Do you see a letdown at all when it comes to Michigan? Because I don't. There's too much on the line. Well, hold on. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. If this is October, I see a letdown. Remember when Iowa beat Penn State, comes back against Purdue? That's a letdown. This is different. This is the Big Ten championship. This is the college football playoff on the line. If you can't get up for this, there's something seriously wrong with you. I mean that, because there's just too much at stake over this.
Yeah, there's a part of me that's like, man, everyone knows Michigan, Ohio State. The whole country's watching. It's the game, as they like to say. But there's a part of me that's like, yeah, that is their Big Ten championship game, is playing Ohio State. But there is stuff on the line here for Michigan. It's not just the Big Ten championship game. It's also a playoff spot. So I'm with you, Trav, that if you can't get up for this, then what are we doing here? But there's that little tiny you got really what you've always tried to do and want, and that's beating Ohio State.
So this is Jim Harbaugh talking about getting ready for Iowa and even reflecting back on that Ohio State win.
Iowa, we didn't know that one was coming. So I guess I say that to say that the way it does help us is we got to understand that that's the way we had to prepare for this one. The same way we prepared for Ohio State. Mentally, physically, spiritually, in every way, we're going to have to do that again this week in order to be successful. Because, we planned for Ohio State, and understood and thought they would be the best opponent on our schedule, and now it's Iowa. Iowa's been ranked number 2. They've had a tremendous season. Now you watch what they've done week in and week out, and you have a clear understanding of what they are and who they are. And so it's going to take the same kind of preparation. So how does that help us going forward? Just understanding that's the level, mentally, physically, spiritually, have to prepare for a great team.
The difference is Kirk Ferentz's press conferences are 30 minutes. Jim Harbaugh's are like 5.5 because I don't think he can spit out a coherent sentence. He's all over the place. But I got what he meant there. But and that is, you have to prepare. Let me sum up what Jim Harbaugh said. You have to prepare the same way each and every week for each and every opponent. And as the weeks go longer, the stakes get higher, and these are higher stakes, but for sure.
Yeah, you can't just go, okay, it's a Big Ten championship game. We're going to get away from everything we've ever done, and we're gonna want to examine the details a little bit more. Do what you do. Stay consistent. Don't get people out of their rhythms or creatures of habit. Right? Like, don't do anything weird.
The interesting part is because Andrew Downs and I went live here a week ago when Michigan beat Ohio State, and then when Minnesota beat Wisconsin. It became clear that Iowa was going to go to the Big Ten title game. And a lot of the feedback we got from that was, you know what, if Iowa played in the Big Ten East, it wouldn't be anything. It would be a bottom dweller. Iowa doesn't really know what it's like to play decent competition. If it had to play Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State every single year, there's no way that Iowa would compete. And I just sit there and laugh at that because I do want to show this, Sean, and take a look at this. These are the common opponents that Michigan and Iowa had this year. And look at this. Maryland, Iowa won 51-14. Michigan won 59-18. Indiana, Iowa won 34-6. Michigan won 29-7. Let's go to Penn State. Iowa won 23-20. Michigan won 21-17. The setback here, the next two games are the differential. And that is Iowa lost to Wisconsin in Madison 27-7. Michigan held Wisconsin below 50 yards rushing and beat the Badgers 38-17. Northwestern 17-12 Iowa win. 33-7 win for Michigan. Then you have the Nebraska game. Iowa just beat Nebraska a week ago, 28-21 in Lincoln, and Michigan also played in Lincoln, and it had to come from behind a number of times to beat the Huskers 32-29. I guess my point here is you can give me all that BS, right, about playing in the Big Ten East, but when you just look at the common opponents, there's not that much separation between the two.
It's a lazy argument. I don't believe in it and when it comes to that stuff. Especially like we talk about it too when there's SEC and the SEC or that's a tired argument. The stats that you just put up there show that outside of the Wisconsin game and the Northwestern game, but I would be fine. I would be fine over there.
And I think we're going to hear from Kirk Ferentz again because Iowa playing in the Big Ten title game for the first time since 2015. Michigan playing in the in its first ever Big Ten title game. But listen to Kirk Ferentz about what he says about the last time Iowa played in the Big Ten title game.
I don't think we were feeling pressure back then. You know, that undefeated thing. It was just we wanted to go there and win the game. And it was a hell of a game, and it's ironic. You know, I still say we went 12-0 that year, but I got more compliments about our team after that game than I did any of the other 12, or maybe those 12 combined, just because both teams competed so hard. And I think that's what you hope for in a championship game. Obviously, if you're on one sideline, you're hoping your team is on the right end of the score. But that was just one unbelievable football game.
And what he was saying there is, remember, Iowa went in kind of disrespected. Same thing. Well, you had a really easy schedule. Remember, it took Iowa a long time, Sean, to even climb in the polls that year. Once they played Michigan State, a team who went on to the college football playoff, and that game went down to the wire, people were like, oh, maybe Iowa was a lot better than people gave them credit for. And I think you could see that exact same thing tonight.
Yeah, 2015 was it was different because they went into that game. They were in the college football playoff going into the Big Ten championship game.
But what I'm saying is they were disrespected schedule-wise more in 2015 than they were this year. This year they started with a win over Indiana. You had the win over Iowa State. You had the win over Penn State. So people kind of went, okay, this Iowa team's pretty good. Then it fell on its face for two straight games. But I think if they play Michigan again tonight, people are going to go, huh, that's the Iowa team we've come to expect. So well coached.
You're going to get the effort, man. You're going to get the effort. This isn't going to be a blowout by any means. The fact that this is as big of a point spread as it is really is weird to me. And I know we'll talk about that later on, but it's weird to me that I think it was last time I checked, it was at 11 this morning. It might have got up to 12 and a half, maybe even. I was going to keep it close. That's what they do. So
Drew's got some question for us. We'll hit some comments and questions. Is it required to put the depth chart out to the public? Is there one time to deceive the opponent? Why not this one at the quarterback position? You do not. Scott Frost at Nebraska didn't put out a depth chart for like the first 5 weeks. You don't have to. And some teams do, some teams don't. Listen, we're going to talk in just momentarily, Drew. We're going to talk about the quarterback position, and I don't think there was any doubt after last week's Nebraska game what exactly was going to happen. Mark says this is awesome. Love seeing TJ back at it. Well, thank you so much,
TJ.
Richard said, yeah, well, you know, I mean, they probably didn't want to try Travis Justice out. Sean Roberts, hi, my friend. That's from Richard. You know Richard?
I know Richard. My
Matt
guy
says. Matt's listening on YouTube, says go Hawks. Dustin's on YouTube, says go Hawks. Mark on Facebook says you guys are great. Thanks, Mark. We really appreciate that. And so much. So if you have comments, feel free to
fill it up, baby.
To fill it up. Let us know what you think. And we will be here, of course, until 7 o'clock tonight. But I do want to remind you that after the game on News Radio 1040 WHO, it's the Jethro's Barbecue Sound Off. It starts at 12 a.m. We're going to go till 2 p.m. Join me, Ross Peterson, and Sean Roberts as we take your phone calls and talk about the Big Ten title game. Write this number down, 515-284-1040.
He will start the game. Spencer will start the game. And, it was a gut feeling Saturday. Just kind of went with it, and we'll continue to do that moving forward. But we'll start the game with Spencer. I thought he did a good job, and he's done a lot of good things here over 2 years right now, and we haven't forgotten about that at all.
Sean, your thoughts on, and he named Spencer Petras early, right? I mean, he went in early with Spencer Petras, and it didn't surprise me. He played well against Nebraska. He seemed more poised in that big game atmosphere with something on the line, and it didn't surprise me that he chose Spencer Petras over Alex Padilla.
No, I wasn't shocked. In fact, I like the fact that it was named early in the week. You get it out of the way. You don't have – both guys know who the guy's going to be. Spencer, for everyone that got on him, right? And, like, when that Northwestern game happened and Padilla took over, and you had that pop, right? We kept always talking about that pop of that first half of football of Alex Padilla. And I even tweeted, I think we have watched Spencer Petras' last start as an Iowa Hawkeye. But Alex never took the job and ran with it. He never did anything that was like, man, this guy has to be the guy. He's earned it. He did. Spencer, we know what we're going to get, right? We know what we're going to get.
Here's the side-by-side comparison. Of course, Spencer Petras has played a hell of a lot more than Alex Padilla has this year, but 137 completions out of 236 attempts. It's 1,532 yards, 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's not a great ratio right there, and he's sitting right at a 58.1% completion rating. Alex Padilla, 45 of 97. 598 yards. He's got 2 touchdown passes. He's got 1 interception. His completion rate not as good at 46.4%. Now, that's not a rip on Alex Padilla because he does certain things better than what Spencer Petras does, and he's a much better. His release is a lot quicker than Spencer Petras's, and he is a lot more mobile than what Spencer Petras is.
He's able to extend plays, and that's something that Spencer cannot do.
Go ahead.
Which is interesting because of Michigan's defensive line. So I'm interested to see what Iowa has up its sleeve as far as the passing game goes, because if it's anything like it usually is, could be in trouble.
Now, a lot of people brought up on the KXNO Morning Rush, and I'm sure they brought it up on the Saturday morning pregame show, was, why not a 2-quarterback system? I'm not a fan of a 2-quarterback system. I'm going to dive into that a little bit in just a little bit, but I don't think you can use Alex Padilla, but I don't think you can go, a quarter here and then a quarter there and then decide. I don't think that's good for anybody, especially the way Iowa plays football. I think they're going to give Spencer Petras plenty of time to try and succeed. If he doesn't succeed, I think you could pull the trigger, much like they did last week at Nebraska when they let Alex Padilla play the entire first half, came out at halftime and said, we're making a change. But I think you have to let the starter, who tonight is Spencer Petras, know that he's going to be your starter for at least the first half.
Here's my thing with the 2-quarterback system. It can work if you have the offense to allow it to work. Iowa doesn't run an offense that a 2-quarterback system during a game will work. They don't run read option. They don't run an option. They don't have a quarterback run game, right? So when you think of 2-quarterback systems, you have the pocket passer, and then you bring in the quarterback that'll run the read option, that'll run the option, gives a little bit different flavor. When Alex Padilla's in there, we've seen it was the same offense. The difference is Alex Padilla was able to extend plays by a few seconds by either go on the run or do something a little bit different. Again, nothing crazy, but he was able to extend just a little bit. Iowa doesn't have read option in their offensive playbook. And if they do, we haven't seen it. So the 2-quarterback system just doesn't work for that.
So here's Kirk Ferentz talking about the 2-quarterback system and his approach to the Big Ten title game with these two guys.
One thing we want to make sure Alex understood, whenever Spencer was healthy, I guess it was 2 games ago, seems like a month ago, was that, we didn't want him looking over his shoulder. And same thing for Spencer. Whoever's in there's got to play, and then we'll handle as we went or as we go. We don't want a guy looking over the shoulder or start that kind of situation. That's not good for anybody, I don't think.
And I totally agree with that, Sean. I think you can't. That's just not the way Kirk Ferentz runs his football team, and never really has. I mean, it's going to be pick your guy and go with him for as long as you can.
Yeah, and my thing here, going with Spencer. Now, here's what's going to happen tonight, right? And we'll see it on Twitter. We'll see it on Facebook. We'll see it probably tonight during sound off. There's going to be a few times Michigan's going to get Spencer. They're going to get him, and it's weathering the storm.
Absolutely, they're going to get him.
It's weathering the storm. He's going to give up a sack. The biggest thing, my advice to Hawkeye fans is to not freak out. It's going to happen. You have a Heisman candidate at defensive end for Michigan. He's going to make a play, and that's okay. You can't let him do it all game, but he's going to get a sack. He's going to get his, right? So just relax.
Well, and the truth is, this game probably is not even going to come down to the quarterbacks. And it's going to be able to come down to Iowa's ability to run the football. And it did a really good job against Nebraska last week. Here is their rushing game right now. It's not spectacular by any means, much like Iowa's offense is not spectacular. But it's averaging 121.2 yards per game. That's just over 3 yards a rush. They do have 17 rushing touchdowns. Even Kirk Ferentz knows that it's not really the quarterbacks here. It's going to be ground and pound.
Just got to bang away at it and see what we can do, and it's going to start by blocking them. You got to try to block them and pick runs maybe that are smart. We're still working on that part of it, but these guys are they're really big up inside. They look like a pro defense. They've got big, strong players inside. They roll a lot of guys through. Depending on your personnel, the outside guys, 97's not coming off the field, but on the other side, they'll put a big physical guy in there too if you're in a run group, if you will. So, they match up strategically. They're smart that way. So they pose a lot of problems for you. They really do. It's we're going to have to, and I don't think we're going to be running for 300 yards. That's not realistic, but we got to try to find a way to run efficiently.
And Tyler Goodson is going to be the guy who gets those carries, Sean. Last week against Nebraska, he looked good. And the truth is, Iowa's been running the football better the last 3 or 4 weeks because that offensive line has gotten a lot better. And Tyler Goodson has been the beneficiary of that offensive line improving. He had a season-high 30 carries last week, a season-high 156 yards on the season, 1,100 yards. His longest run from scrimmage, 56 yards, and he does have 6 touchdowns this year. So, I mean, to me, Tyler Goodson's going to have a big game.
Trav, you talk about this all the time on the Morning Rush and on Sound Off. Iowa if they're going to win and be successful, they have to establish a running game. We saw it against Penn State, right? They established that running game, and what did it do? It set up for the one big play of the game, the Spencer Petras play-action touchdown pass. That's what it allows Iowa to do. So if Iowa can just run the football, stick to it, hopefully it opens up things a little bit.
Well, this is what they're facing tonight, and it's not spectacular by any means. I mean, Michigan gives up 123 yards a game on the ground. That falls right into Iowa's average. They're giving up about 3.5 yards per carry. Again, that's right in their average. They're stingy. They've only given up 11 rushing touchdowns. But you heard Kirk Ferentz mention the name 97, and he's talking about Aiden Hutchinson. And I want you to hear, and this is a long soundbite, but I want you to hear Kirk Ferentz just throw praise upon praise of Aiden Hutchinson and how good this guy really is, because he is the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I don't know what you do to neutralize him. He's just an outstanding player. And, but you better know where he lines up. And it's fairly predictable, but the only problem is the guy on the other side's, I don't want to say equally dangerous, but it's pretty close. It's a 1-2. So I was thinking this morning, I don't know how often we've faced a team that has two guys outside like that can be as disruptive as they are. And I said to somebody in the last 48 hours, I forget who I was talking to, just about, Hutchinson. When I was in the NFL, there were two guys. I mean, there are a lot of good players in the NFL, needless to say. That's an obvious statement. A guy like Reggie White doesn't count because he was so freakishly talented. He had size, speed, strength that were just extraordinary. Plus, better person than he was player. But there were two guys that always stood out in my career, my time, at least my 6 years, my long career, 6 years, right? But Howie Long was one of them, and John Randall was just and John Randall played more inside than outside, but just a Tasmanian devil. And Howie Long the same way. If you relaxed one play, he was going to be in there, wrecking a play and really causing havoc. And that's what they're not the same player as those two guys I described. Hutchinson's not, but he just doesn't stop. He doesn't stop, and that's part of the reason he's so good. Plus, he's got a real good skill set. But he's got just a motor that is it's really impressive. Really impressive.
Sean, you heard who he compared him to. Those are big names. And when you throw out John Randall, when you throw out Howie Long, when you throw out Reggie White, those are pretty darn big names. You're comparing a guy to, right? I mean, this guy's a beast.
Yeah, those are Hall of Fame NFL players. So,
but I'm glad you recognize that, Sean.
But look at this though, Trav. I mean, last week he has 3 sacks against Ohio State in the biggest game of their season. That's showing up. That's a big time player making big time plays in a big time game, and that's what I'm saying is coming in tonight. He's gonna get his. You can't let him do it all game. He's going to get 1. He might get 2, but the dude is a beast. This is a guy that people are saying, Andrew Downsteady on the Saturday morning pregame, this guy should win the Heisman Trophy in a year that we don't have a solid winner really going into the last week of the season. But
I mean, just look at the numbers: 54 tackles, 32 unassisted, 22 assisted. He has 14.5 tackles for loss. He has 13 sacks. I believe one more. I'm trying to see this. I think one more breaks the record, the all-time Michigan record for a single season. It's absolutely sick. And if you watched him last week against Ohio State, he was all over the place. So we mentioned that Iowa offensive line being improved. It's going to have to contain, and Kirk Ferentz is right. I mean, there's just so many other guys on the other side of the foot, on the other side of that line that is just amazingly tough. Here, I'm gonna throw some more defensive numbers out there for you for Michigan. It's registered. This is a crazy number. It's registered 300 negative yards on 66 tackles for loss. And when it comes, and we mentioned that ground and pound game for Iowa tonight. It's going to get tougher because Michigan held Wisconsin to below 50 yards rushing, and it held Washington to below 50 yards rushing. I mean, that's impressive.
It's extremely impressive, and Iowa's got to stick with it though. They're not a spread offense.
No, they're not. Yep.
So if you give up on the run, even if it's not working, right? Like even if it's not working early on, keep with it, because what does Iowa do? At least when they're very successful or they win ball games, they wear the other team down. So keep going, stay at it. Hopefully Goodson can break something open. Who knows? But don't run away from it.
David Dunn, Facebook says, with the talent on the Michigan defensive line, Padilla's ability to move should have given him the start. Have we really? Okay, I know what you're saying. Do we really know how mobile Alex Padilla is?
No.
Have we really seen him show that mobility?
No,
we've seen him outside the pocket make some really nice throws and some difficult throws, but we don't. When we talk about mobility, I don't know if we've quite seen it to the left. I do think he's more mobile than Spencer Petras. I'm not trying to say he's not. I'm just saying, have we really seen the mobility from Alex Padilla against Northwestern, against Illinois, and against Minnesota that makes you believe that he can take on the Michigan defensive line? I don't think so.
We haven't, Trav, because Iowa's offense isn't set for that.
Yeah.
You're not running a shotgun spread offense with Alex Padilla. Now it would be a different ball game if Iowa did that. The difference of what Padilla gives you is you can run a couple more bootlegs, maybe, right? Like you can run a few more of those, and then also if there is pressure, he might be able to extend a play, but it's nothing earth-shattering.
Patrick comes in on Facebook and says, "Hey, where's Ross? I don't want you to panic, all right? Ross is actually he's at a dinner tonight. Then I know he's going to watch some of the game with his dad, which is a good thing to do. But I can tell you this, that Ross will be with us for the Jethro's Barbecue Sound Off, all right? You don't have to worry about that. It's Sound Off. It's WHO After Dark is what we're calling it. We are going to go on the air at 12 a.m. We're going to be on the air until 2 p.m. Join myself. Ross Peterson will be here. Sean Roberts, make sure to write down this number right now, 515-284-1040. We're going to be taking your phone calls and talking about this Big Ten title game, which we're going to be talking about the spread a little bit later on. Does Iowa compete with Michigan? Hey, they're in there. Nobody thought they were going to compete with Michigan State back in 2015, and that turned out to be a dandy of a game. And I have a feeling we might get another one of those tonight.
You're going against a team that knows what they're doing, how they're doing it. The execution is tremendous, down after down, and you're so focused on stopping that everything else is still a possibility. I mean, that is a daunting challenge.
A daunting challenge, according to Jim Harbaugh. But I was feeling that same daunting challenge. Let's look at Michigan, Sean. We've talked a lot about Michigan's defense, and Aiden Hutchinson just an absolute beast. And I mean, he is a beast, right? But I kind of got into it with a Michigan fan on YouTube during the week because they said, because I said I wasn't a fan of the two quarterback system, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, J.J. McCarthy says, hold my beer. I said, well, hold on for a second. Your definition of a two quarterback system is different than mine.
They run a different offense.
Well, but listen, Cade McNamara is Michigan's quarterback.
Yes.
Cade McNamara is Michigan's quarterback. Does J.J. McCarthy come in? Yes. He's played 9 games. Has he thrown some touchdown passes? Yes. But it's not like it's this rotation at quarterback. Cade McNamara is Michigan's quarterback. That's the way it is. Michigan, are you ready? God, these numbers are sick. Michigan has 59 plays of 20 or more yards, 37 passing, 22 rushing. Michigan has 10 scoring plays over 50 yards, 6 passing and 4 rushing.
They can run the football.
And they can run Hassan Haskins is your all Big Ten running back, right? He has 18 touchdowns, lead the Big Ten in one more touchdown. By the way, that leads the Big Ten, and one more ties a Michigan season record. They can run the football.
He had a hell of a game last week against Ohio State, and again, it was one of the big players for Michigan having a big game, or having a huge day in a big game, making plays.
Now Iowa's defense is going to have to counter that, right? So what does Iowa look like on defense? We know what Iowa looks like. And this is where if I was going to win the football game, the Iowa defense has to continue to intercept passes, because that's what Iowa does, right? I mean, it has to
Riley Moss, baby.
Well, look at, I mean, Iowa leads the country in interceptions at 22. It ranks third nationally in takeaways. And we saw it against Purdue, we saw it against Wisconsin. If Iowa does not force a turnover, Iowa will not win this football game. Plain and simple. Iowa has to be able to get an interception, force a fumble tonight, and probably is going to need at least 2 takeaways to beat Michigan. Is that not enough?
No. They need turnover. We said it in the beginning. We've been saying it all week. Turnovers, special teams.
Yes.
Turnovers, special teams. If one of those doesn't happen, whether it's Torrey Taylor pinning him deep, Charlie Jones not getting a huge return.
Well, and you bring up Charlie Jones. There he is right there, ranked second in the Big Ten, average 8.5 yards on a league high 34 punt returns. He's returned 23 kickoffs for an average of 26.3 yards per return. That's number 2 in the Big Ten. So if Iowa wins a game, it needs to force turnovers, and it needs to have – it's a broken record, but you need these special teams plays.
It's the story of the 2021 Hawks.
It really, really is. And it's very, very simple. The story really this year is that of Jim Harbaugh. He's a Michigan man, right? But at the end of last year, a lot of people thought that Jim Harbaugh was going to get fired. And he took a restructured contract, and he laid low this year. If you follow Jim Harbaugh, he laid really low. He didn't do anything really flamboyant. And now in his 7th season, he finally beat Ohio State. He has a 60-23 record. Look at that. That's a 72% win rate. I mean, he's up there with Gary Mueller, Bo Schembechler, Lloyd Carr.
He's about to get fired.
Yeah, and he was about to get fired. And we're going to get into that a little bit.
We know why, though. We know why.
Well, we do know why. Because he couldn't beat Ohio State.
Yep.
That was the only reason why. Now, these numbers will be something that I think Iowa fans like. He's never won a game in December. Well, we're in December. He does have 4 10-win seasons. They are 9-17, all right, under his career, when they are negative on the turnover margin. So we were just bringing up Iowa being able to force turnovers and make sure they don't turn the ball over. If Michigan is negative on that turnover margin, Jim Harbaugh over his career in his 7 seasons, 9-17. And if Tyler Goodson can go for 100 yards tonight, look at that. 7-13 career record when an opponent has a 100-yard rusher. Do those numbers surprise you a little bit?
Stick to the run tonight. Stick to it. Get Goodson over 100 yards.
Yes. I
didn't know he had that many 10-win seasons. Going to be honest with you.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. But what it really says is that many 10-win seasons is that Michigan knows exactly who it is, much like Iowa does, and it's something that Kirk Ferentz notices.
They're extremely talented, really in all phases. They've got good depth, very, very talented. They're very well coached. And, to me, good teams, this is typical of good teams, but, Michigan's got a real identity, offensively, defensively, special teams. You can tell their players fully believe in what they're doing. They do it well, and they do it with a lot of energy and really play at a high level. So, it's just a real credit to their football team. They've had a great season, got off to a good start. Had the one bump in the road, 4 or 5 weeks ago, whatever that might have been, and came right back and just finished out the season in a really impressive fashion. And I can't imagine them playing a lot better than they did this past Saturday against a team that's extremely talented and really a very good football team also. So.
Now, I'll give them credit. Michigan is really good, but if you've been watching this SEC title game, Alabama and Georgia are really good as well. And Alabama is 2 minutes away from beating Georgia. It's 38-24 right now. So this throws a wrench in everything. Cincinnati is going to beat Houston, and Cincinnati will be in the college football playoff.
Congrats
Alabama
to them,
winning. What's that?
Congrats to them, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And they deserve to be there.
Yep.
You have Georgia now will probably drop down to number 3. Alabama most likely goes to number 1. If Michigan wins tonight, I don't think they go to number 1. I think they stay at that number 2 spot. So there's your 4. If Michigan wins, you've got your 4 wrapped up.
Yeah, so we went into today hoping for chaos and a bunch of things, and you get the crazy Oklahoma State Baylor game, which that threw a curveball at everything to start the day because Oklahoma State being 5, if someone were to lose tonight, Oklahoma State probably slides in being a Big 12 champion. That doesn't happen, right? So then you look at number 6, Notre Dame. Number 6, Notre Dame now would bump to their 5. So if someone loses, as of right now, that's not happening. So if Iowa can beat Michigan, my guess is Notre Dame slides into 4. Michigan is out. Cincinnati 3. Or no, Georgia 3. Georgia 3. Who do you put 2? Alabama's going to be 1.
No, Michigan's going to stay number 2, right?
Or if Michigan, I'm saying if Iowa beats Michigan.
Well, if Iowa beats Michigan, I think Georgia goes to 2, Cincinnati 3, and Notre Dame 4, or Notre Dame would be 4. I think that's what they would do.
Yeah.
But we were talking about Jim Harbaugh getting that extra year, right? People were like, okay, they didn't. We've seen a lot of programs fire coaches after 2, 3, 4 years because they're not getting it done right away. And we're seeing that. And that's a dangerous road to go. It's not always the smartest road to go. It takes a while. And the one thing Jim Harbaugh didn't have going for him is that Ohio State was one of the best teams in the country the last 6 years that Jim Harbaugh has been the head coach. It does take time, and sometimes you just have to get over that hump. And Kirk Ferentz knows the best way to build a program, the best way to be consistent over the long haul is to be just that, consistent.
Well, I think it's everything. That's one person's opinion. And, I've said this before, it kind of goes back to my roots growing up in Pittsburgh, where as bad as Iowa was in 1981, the Steelers were worse. They were just so bad prior to 1969. And I've long admired the Rooneys, the Rooney family, and I've met one or two of them, but I'm not personal friends. But anybody I've known through the years who's worked in that organization, I always pick their brains about why does it work, what's it like internally. And the bottom line is they just have there's a good chain of command, there's good communication. This is my opinion, between the head coach, the general manager, and the ownership. And that sounds really basic and pretty undramatic, but it's so uncommon in probably a lot of corporations, just quite frankly, not just football. So at least, I think that I don't want to speak for any of the guys that coach there, but I'm guessing when they went to work every day, they kind of knew what the expectation was, what the standards were, and what they were trying to accomplish, and also knew that they're going to be supported, and in this world of, microwave decision making, they don't abide by that philosophy. So I feel fortunate, and to me it all started here. 2 people with Coach Fry and Bump Elliott. Those 2 people really set the bar for what was going to follow here. And if you look at all of our programs, there's a lot of stability in all the programs here. And we compete in a tough league. This isn't the NFL, I understand, but the Big Ten's competitive and tough, and you're not going to win every year. And some years aren't going to be much fun, and that's a reality of it. Nobody wants that. So to me, it's all about the people and in the building, and then it's also about trying to address whatever issues you may have or whatever things that need to be shored up. And again, I will look at the world pretty simplistically. The Steelers have grasped that concept. They've probably invented it in pro football. If you look at the other teams that are really successful, you're going to see a model that's somewhat similar.
He's not wrong, Sean. And people make fun of Nebraska right now. They're like, look at all the coaches that got through. But when Nebraska was at its best, it had Bob Devaney and it had Tom Osborne, right? And you had 25 years of Tom Osborne, and then it was like a drug. Winning becomes a drug. And we've seen it at all these other schools that fire their coaches because they were winning, and then it doesn't keep the standard, and you keep trying to chase the dragon. You can't chase the dragon all the time. You're going to lose everything. You're going to go crazy. And listen, we were hard on Kirk Ferentz back in 2014. We were wrong. All right. We were wrong. I can admit that we were wrong, but he also reinvented himself. There was something that changed, and I think we've seen it in recruiting. I think they've gone after better players. I think there's just now offensively they're still bad, right? They're just not a good offensive team, but we've seen this, and he's not wrong when you say you have to be consistent. Listen, I'm 51 years old. Okay, he talks about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I'm 51 years old. The Steelers have had 3 head coaches in my lifetime.
That's wild.
Three head coaches.
Consistency, though, man, it's important. It's important.
It really, and and think about this. It could have been easily where Kirk Ferentz lost his job a year ago, 18 months ago, when the allegations of racism and mistreatment happened. We were going, what is going to happen? And much like in 2014, we're like, is Kirk Ferentz on the hot seat in 2015? Was Kirk Ferentz going to be on the hot seat in 2020? And what we've seen maybe now is, and he's been emotional, right? I think the last 18 months have been extremely, extremely hard on Kirk Ferentz. But he says they're a better program today than they were 18 months ago.
I think it is. I think it's evidenced by the way our guys have played and responded. And I'll go back, just stealing thoughts. Steve Bannock talked to our team years ago and, talked about believing the impossible is possible and, do the next right thing. And that's really kind of what guided us through that whole period. It's just all about trying to do the next right thing. Figure out what is the next right thing, and then let's make sure we're doing it. And the credit goes to everybody in the building because everybody had input. What do we need to look at? And I think I've quoted Jim Caldwell to you on the advisory board saying that Kirk's players will tell him what needs to be done, and that was great advice, really good advice. So it was a player, staff getting together and working through things very methodically and thoroughly, and then most important thing is following up on a consistent basis. And I think we've done that. And it's like football. You're never done. Like it's just never. Our season will end here at some point, and we'll relax and all that stuff. Seniors, it'll be done for them, unfortunately. But then you move on to the next phase, and that's kind of what we've tried to do is just try to, keep handling the next phase as smartly as we possibly can.
And I do want to report this that Chad Leistikow said that Kirk Ferentz told the team last night at the team meeting that he plans on returning in 2022, and also said that he plans on being the head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes for years to come. His current contract runs through 2025. Quick reminder that the Jethro's Barbecue Sound Off is coming up after the Big Ten Championship game. Join myself, Ross Peterson, and Sean Roberts from 12 a.m. to 2 or that shouldn't be PM. We're not going that long. That's a typo on my part, and I apologize for that. We're going to go 2 hours, 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. as it's WHO After Dark. If you're wondering about the line for this, or Sean and I happen to be represented as a Betfred Sports over on KXNO, so we're going to give Betfred Sports a little a plug tonight. Michigan on BetfredSports.com is a 10.5 point favorite. If you like to bet the money line, Iowa can get you some cash tonight at plus 350. If you like the over under, you can go at 43.5. And who should we talk about lines with than one of my favorite human beings on the face of the earth, sitting in Las Vegas, Nevada right now, is Scott Spreitzer. What's up, buddy?
How you doing, guys? Good to be on with you.
Oh, man, it's we're getting ready. We just watched Alabama pummel Georgia. Did you see that one coming?
I tell you what, I passed the game, but I did a bunch of shows this week, including last night, where I was saying, if you're a numbers guy, you do not go against Bama in this game. Let's, remember 2 weeks ago when sportsbooks put that line up, and you can live bet that before even last week's games were played. Georgia opened a 3-point favorite. They went to 3.5. Then after what happened last week, we saw that number go crazy, get up to 6.5, even as high as 7 late last night. So for me, it was a situation of, okay, the eye test says Bama gets beat, but you stick with the numbers. Bama covers the spread. Didn't see this kind of a mismatch, if you will, coming. And what happened was, I really think, guys, that Alabama's struggles last week up front on the offensive line did a lot for this football team getting ready for this week. If they would have blown out Auburn, they would have not probably worked on some of the leaks they had up front for this week's game.
All right, so let's dive into this game. I just showed the Betfred odds. Did you touch this game tonight? And give us. You always come to these interviews with amazing statistics, some analytics that blow our minds away. So take us through the Iowa-Michigan game tonight, Scott.
Well, Travis, here's the thing. I mean, it's up to 12.5 just in the last couple of hours.
12.5?
Yeah, 12.5, and about half the books in Vegas. The rest of them have 12. Some of the books located far, far from our borders in the U.S. have basically stuck around 11.5. But the interesting thing about this one is my power rating said Michigan 10.5. So when this line opened 10.5, 11 for the most part, even though my power ratings are right there saying this is where the number should be, I jumped on Iowa. And it has a lot to do with what happened last week with Michigan, obviously trying to get that same intensity level up. There were 3,000, I'm not kidding, 3,648 days between victories over Ohio State. You can't blame them if they're a little happy after last week. So basically what I did is I did take the points with Iowa, and I looked at this game thinking that Michigan is going to have a rough time getting that intensity level back to where it was last week. Anybody between the age of 18 and 22, hell, 18 and our age would have a rough time at doing that.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. But also, listen, I don't want to take too much credit away from Michigan's win. Ohio State shot themselves in the foot quite a few times last week. Iowa doesn't shoot themselves in the foot. They just don't. I mean, I know a lot of people outside of the Midwest, they don't give Kirk Ferentz the credit he deserves. It's one of the most well-coached programs in the last 20 years. Whether they go 8-4 or whether they're 11-0 and playing, for a title in the Big Ten, the bottom line is they buy into what he and his coaching staff preaches. They don't beat themselves. You better come out. You better play a really good game and not turn the ball over, because if you do, Iowa's going to make you play right to the very end if you're going to beat them. So for those reasons, I jumped on Iowa. If you want to look at a good example about in-game adjustments by the Iowa Hawkeyes, last week, and I think I used this on a couple of the shows this week, Nebraska comes out with a brand new quarterback for the most part, plays a few plays throughout the course of the season, no big plays. They run an option, basically, that first series. And Iowa gives up a touchdown drive of whatever it was, 7, 8, 9 plays, 70 yards. And within minutes, they made the adjustment. That option offense that Iowa hasn't prepared for all year, basically, just changed enough on defense to shut it down for most of the rest of the game. Then they let their opponent make mistakes. Iowa takes advantage, wins the football game. Are they as talented individually? Heck no, they're not. They don't even out-recruit Nebraska, but they're way better coached than most teams they play.
And see, and you're a professional bettor. You're a professional gambler, right? So you're able to look at this. I think most people are like, oh, it's going to be a blowout. They do all this. These are fans who bet with their heart, think with their heart, and they don't think with their head by any means.
Yeah, I've done enough shows with you over the last 20 years, basically, to where I've come on your show and I've talked for Iowa, I've talked against Iowa. The betting public, by the way, as you can imagine, is on Michigan. I checked right before I jumped on your show, and about 55% of the tickets were on Michigan. About 55% of the money was on Iowa. So it's a bit of a Joes versus pros. It's the public on the Wolverines, sharper money on the Iowa Hawkeyes in this game. And you're right. I mean, you just really got to take your emotions, your fan support. And I'm a fan of a few teams. You got to take that out of the mix when it comes to handicapping and betting. And if you don't, you're going to lose your bankroll pretty fast. You go back to being a fan again. But that's what you learn over the years, is to separate fandom from trying to win a few more bets than you lose.
So, yeah, obviously, you jumped on Iowa and hoping to cover. What if I tell you Iowa runs Tyler Goodson goes for 120 tonight, scores 2 touchdowns, and Iowa's defense forces 3 turnovers? Do they win outright?
They went outright. They went outright 23-20, 20-16 in that neighborhood. The total basically 43.5, 44. So if they played their game, you would think it would stay under, and you would think they find a way to win this game if they play perfectly their game by like a 24-20, 2017 type of final score. I will take that. I will take 3 or 4 turnovers for Michigan if you want to give them to me, by the way, because I think that's what you're going to need. They're going to have to make a few mistakes along the way, the Wolverines. It's not going to be their best against Iowa's best and Iowa wins this football game. It's going to be Iowa's best against Michigan, maybe being a little bit flat.
What do you think, as you look at the conference championship games today, you had Cincinnati. Of course, you had Utah last night beat Oregon. You just had Alabama crushed Georgia. You've got the Big 12 game that was a doozy today. Your whole prognosis or thoughts on the conference championship games you've seen so far and the ones coming up tonight.
I passed that Baylor-Oklahoma State game, which I'm bummed that I did, but I did because of the quarterback injury situation for Baylor. They weren't quite sure how well he was going to, be able to perform. And it was the same kind of spot for Oklahoma State that Michigan is in. Maybe Michigan doesn't, fall apart as far as the intensity level is concerned off of last week's big win. But Oak State finally getting past the Sooners, getting that monkey off their back. They were kind of in that same spot that the Wolverines are in tonight. So I looked to play Baylor. I eventually had to hold off past the Cincinnati-Houston game. Of course, poor Cincinnati, they're now going to have to play Alabama in the playoffs, it looks like. And then, of course, as far as the UL Lafayette, that was one of the two plays I had today. UL Lafayette plus the points. Give me a home team in a conference championship. Give me points against a team that blew out by 30 points early in the season. I'm normally going to look to play on that team or stay away from the game. So took Louisiana on that one, and we got Iowa tonight. But, you're going to get Alabama against Cincy, poor Cincy. You're going to get Georgia against Michigan if Michigan wins in all likelihood, and poor Michigan. I don't. If Michigan wins this game, I'm going to tell you right now, there's not going to be a lot of second thinking. I'm going to be looking to pounce on Georgia for that semifinal game.
And what I just heard is what everybody needs to realize is when you're a professional gambler, you don't bet every single game out there. You're very strategic about what you bet. I've learned that from Scott over the last 20 years. Scott, always good talking to you, my friend. Good luck with your bets, and we'll touch base and have you on maybe for the bowl game. That sound good?
Perfect, man. Go Hawkeyes. Let's get it done.
Yeah, Scott. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Scott Spreitzer joining us. Good stuff from Scott, as always. Let's get to some of the comments from Dustin, who's watching on YouTube tonight. I have confidence Kirk preparing this team for the game. I listen, I have confidence in Kirk preparing for the game. Do you have confidence in the team executing? That's
during
the
the game.
one.
During the game.
That's the number one question. Tim says, I was going to get smoked.
No.
Oh, come on now.
Disagree with that one.
Smoked.
Disagree with that one.
See, and you just heard Scott Spreitzer say, no. Listen, gamblers lose. I get that. But he's a smart dude. And if you followed the Morning Rush, if you followed the Jethro's Barbecue Sound-Off, we've had Scott on a lot. He's a smart dude. He's been able to make it in Vegas for over 30 years, all right? He likes Iowa tonight, just to cover, not to get smoked. Anthony on Facebook says, go Hawks from Grand Forks, North Dakota. Let's get this title. That would be huge, right? That would be absolutely huge because, as I mentioned earlier, a win would put Iowa into the Rose Bowl, which everybody likes to do. Yeah, everybody's going to ask what happens to Iowa if it loses. And that would probably drop it into the Citrus Bowl is where we're talking about. Ryan on Facebook says, the best part of the day is sound off till 2 a.m. Prove me wrong. I don't think we can prove you wrong, Ryan. I really don't.
I think he's right.
Oi, oi, oi. Special teams. That's from Chad. Gotta like that, Chad. How about this? Jason down in Florida says, go Hawkeyes from sunny Florida.
Jealous.
Oh,
it's starting to get chilly here. Starting to get chilly here.
It really is. Kyle says, bring on the Utes. Boy. Well, if Iowa goes to the Citrus Bowl, it's going to be playing an SEC team down in the Citrus Bowl if that were to happen. Of course, the Jethro's Barbecue Sound-Off is coming up right after the game on News Radio 1040 WHO. Gary Dolphin, Ed Podolak going to start calling the game and kickoff just after 7 o'clock. After the post-game show, we are scheduled to go live and again, that's should not be 2 p.m. I don't want to do – I could do 14 hours of radio. I think we would be exhausted by the end of it. So excuse my typo. 12 a.m. to 2 p.m. With me, Ross, and Sean Roberts, of course, because Sean likes hanging out till the wee hours of the morning, don't you, buddy?
Yeah. No, not really anymore. If we went to 2 p.m., I'd be in trouble, though, because I do have to report to the NAP Center at 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Oh, that's got and we do, before we get to our predictions for tonight's game, I do want to send out a big congratulations to the Grandview Vikings. Yes. Grandview is, if you're not familiar with Grandview, it's an NAIA school located right here in Des Moines. Sean is a Grandview graduate. I am a Grandview graduate, and Coach Joe Woodley and the Vikings beat Lindsey Wilson today in the NAIA semifinals, and the Vikings are on to the national championship game to play another Iowa school, Morningside. So it's going to be Morningside against Grandview in the NAIA national championship. And also, if you follow, you remember Mekhi Sargent, former Iowa running back, he played at Iowa Western. This is how good a football you have in Iowa right now, guys. Grandview and Morningside going to the NAIA National Championships. Look at what Pella was doing on the Division III side. I was in the Big Ten Championship game. Iowa Western, where Iowa and Iowa State pick up a lot of players. Iowa Western going to the junior college national championship game. All right, Sean, I got about a minute left. Give me your prediction, buddy.
Hawks by 1,000,000. Let's go.
I think you got to pay Tyler Kluber some of that and show it. Okay, where'd you get this shirt? Look at that. Where'd you get this shirt at?
I got
Hold
it
it
from,
up again. Hold it up again. Make Michigan our Bichigan. I don't think it's supposed to roll off the tongue like that, but where exactly did you get that shirt, Sean?
Got it from good buddy Teddy Holly. He said, "Hey, I got shirts for you and the boys. Come pick them up today out in Polk City." Went out, scooped them up, and I'm riding high on Iowa. I need them for personal reasons. All
Notre
right?
Dame. Yep.
I need them for personal reasons, and I truly believe that Iowa pulls this off.
Wow.
Even if Notre Dame wasn't in the mix here, I was gonna roll with Iowa.
That's impressive. That's
What
impressive.
about you? What about you?
You know what? I don't want people to not think that I'm not a believer, but I think Michigan is. I think Iowa covers tonight. I'll take Iowa in the 12.5. I do think Michigan wins, advances to the college football playoff. Just too much on the line, and this defense is pretty stout. I think Michigan wins, but I think it's going to be one hell of a game. Sean, did you have fun over this hour?
Yeah, man, it flew by.
It really did, didn't it?
Really flew by.
Thanks for everybody for watching. Thanks to Scott Spreitzer for coming on. Ross Peterson will be in for the Jethro's Barbecue Sound Off. Sean
Hawks!
said it all.
Go Hawks!
Coming up next on News Radio 1040 WHO.